subject of the Endowment program lecture is Knowledge and the Village, Redefining Development Goals. Speaker is Shri J.K. Suresh of Gram Seva Sangh. On behalf of all of you and the India Culture, I extend to him a very warm welcome. Before we proceed with the talk, it is but in the order of things that we briefly recount the great contribution made by Sri N.K. Anantanarayana Iyer, in whose memory this endowment is made. He is a great man who has rendered human service for social development. So we remember with gratitude his service. Sri N.K. Anantanarayana Iyer was born in Ganjigunte, Mulabagir Taluk of Kolar district in 1920. He did primary education in local school in Ganjigunte, middle school at Devarayan Samudra, and high school in Basagudi in Bangalore. His intermediate education was from National College, Bangalore, and he did his BSc and MSc in Botany from Civil College between 1940 and 1945. After MSc, he served as ranger at Mysore Forest Service for 6 months and then got Tata Fellowship to do PhD in forestry from University of Washington, Seattle, USA. He completed PhD at the end of 1946. Then he was the first Indian officer in Assam Railways and trading company, which is a British firm in charge of forest and plywood industry. He took retirement as the general manager of the company in 1962 when he joined J. Krishnamurti and worked in Rishi Valley School as honorary member. During 1960 to 1970, he contributed a great deal to the propagation of trees in Rayalaseema region of Andhra Pradesh and also in Arunachal Pradesh. He was also consultant on social forestry for the international organization from Netherlands, UK and US. He has extensively worked with NGOs and governments propagating social forestry in Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Arunachal Pradesh and Odisha. In 1979, along with college friends, he founded Grama Vikas, of which Sri Lakshman Rao worked as co-founder chairman. During that time, he was very active in Grama Vikas till his last breath, promoting programs to improve the livelihood of the poor, focusing on children, women, environment and ecology. He had special love for regeneration of tanks in Mulabagir area, for which Grama Vikas has been a pioneer. His philosophy and spirit continues today in the activity of the Grama Vikas. Mr. N.K. Iyer passed away in January 1992. Now coming to the present speaker, a few brief words of introduction of him. Shri J.K. Suresh is a trustee of the Gram Seva Sangh, Bengaluru. The Gram Seva Sangh aims to build deep connection between rural and urban India and thereby aid the process of reconstruction of the society by integrating sustainable livelihood with deep environmental concerns. He is also a founding member of the Lok Vidya Vedike, a Bengaluru-based platform that is part of the Lok Vidya Jan Andolan initiated by Vidya Ashram at Varanasi. The Lok Vidya movement endeavors to develop a dialogue on the knowledge in society to aid the emergence of new politics for achieving equity and social justice. He obtained his BTech and MS Engineering from Indian Institute of Technology at Kanpur and Madras respectively, and a PhD from the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. He worked in the Infosys. Now he gave up the corporate job and he has dedicated himself to the ideal of Gram Seva Sangha. He believes in, and we all concur with him, that the true prosperity of India lies in Gram Vikas. So, I will not go into the profile of the Gram Vikas because it will take a long time. He will be speaking about it in the course of his talk. And some flyers are there, probably some few copies are available. You can avail of it after the meeting. So, I request you to kindly call it. So, I hand over the mic to Sri Suresh. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me begin with what Gandhi is said to have said possibly about 80 years ago. And that's at the bottom. And when he says that he finds the evening prayer of the peasant with hands which are, caked with mud from base toils, as appealing to God as that of the scholar invoking him in a very beautiful voice and with poetic incantations. In some sense, I think that describes India for many of us. And India, which seems to have very fundamental contradictions between the urban and rural India, between the rich and poor, between the haves and the have-nots, and so on and so forth. In our minds, perhaps because of, in my opinion, 2 centuries of such ideologies being driven into our minds, driven into our very subconscious, as it were, we seem to think that this is what really is the characteristic of India. That India has been like this, a land of inequality, a land of just injustice, a land of iniquity for millennia. And it does appear, therefore, to strengthen our efforts to actually get India out of this morass, out of this very unfortunate state of things about which we feel so very diffident, so very sort of ashamed sometimes even, when we look at the apparent progress made by the rest of the world in comparison with India. And all too often it is said that India is so much of a land of contradiction, so much of a land of pain and suffering, that maybe, sometimes I've heard wishes over the last 30, 40, 50 years of, speaking to people in various kinds of, political and non-political situations, that it is as though the majority of India is itself one of the greatest burdens for India. And these are the people who have no education, who have no ability to understand the modern context and idiom of the world. They have remained regressive, they have not progressed, and therein lies one of our greatest problems. And it appears that such views have really, if one were to look at it in a historical sense, these appear to have actually come in no later than about 100, 150 years from now. And the picture of what India was around the time of the the forays made by the British, or around the time the British became very, very important in the Indian political scenario, which happens to be somewhere in the late 18th century, early 19th century. The picture at that time seems to be very fundamentally different. And this is a picture which we are very fortunate that a very great man called Dharampa actually provided us this picture of the history of India around the time the British came into influencing Indian affairs and so on. It is thanks to it that we seem to understand that it was possibly in the middle or late 1800s that as a consequence of the capture of power, colonial power in India by the British, there seems to have been a very fundamental sea change in the attitude that the world had about India. When you look at the pictures of 1700s, 1800s and late 1800s, there seems to be one picture of India that people have, and it's in the middle of the 19th century and subsequently that you find that these ideas of the outsider, the British or the European and so on and so forth, those ideas undergo a very fundamental change. And what is very interesting is that in the next 50 to 80 years, perhaps starting around the middle of 18th century and continuing thereon, is that the Indian himself starts feeling that there is something fundamentally problematic about India. That we are indeed backward, that we are indeed people who have a very troubled history of inequity and so on. And this whole process continues. In fact, one of the greatest oppositions to this happens to be Gandhi, possibly in great influence for around 1915, 16 and so on and so forth. And it's only after this that we find that there is a certain reversal of these ideas about India. And the great freedom movement, about which possibly many people here are aware of, was not merely a fight to obtain freedom for India. This was also a fight to rediscover India, the real India, which had been to a large extent misrepresented or ill understood in the previous 100 to 100 years. And the fighting spirit that, let's say, the Indian freedom movement provided was in some sense very useful to reconstruct the process of understanding India, and not merely about reconstructing India itself. But as things ended up, even after 1947, it appears that those who had the view of India as being the next path for India, or next steps for India after independence, were seen to be largely only in the path that the British had trod for themselves and for the rest of the world. And therein began a process of what we call as development, and that's where the story really begins. Before this, I would just like to say a few words about the Gram Seva Sangh and some of what we have been doing, and preface it by saying that what I hope to do through this lecture is to perhaps start the process of questioning. This questioning of what lies at the heart of India's current problems. What are indeed the problems? Possibly all of us know what the problems of India seem to be, either in terms of broad kinds of categories like inequity and injustice, but also in terms of how we might possibly be able to understand it better, to avoid getting into the same kinds of endless debates that we seem to be having in the last 40, 50 years, and how the binary categories through which we understand this world, it could be either freedom versus enslavement, democracy versus dictatorship, or in terms of let us say other kinds of binaries, which are polarized kinds of opposites of each other, how they have actually come to mean the same thing for 70-80% of our people. So with that as the basis, what I would hope to do is that we begin a process of dialogue, begin a process of questioning within ourselves first, and then perhaps start looking at how we get together, how we understand the larger problem of India, and try to see how we are going to approach that. Because from one angle, it appears that from the viewpoint of Bangalore, when we sit here, or maybe similar cities like Chennai, Mumbai, and so on and so forth, it looks like the problem of India is something which is more easily handleable. After all, there are thousands of organizations. The government is giving so many thousands of crores of rupees, and how is it that the people are undeveloped as of now? How is it that these people actually do not seem to have actually pulled themselves up? It has been 70 years since we started giving rural quotas. 70 years since we actually gave such a large percentage of our budget to the development of these villages and so on. Where is the truth then? But if I get outside of Bangalore, just 50 kilometers away from Bangalore, I find that things are in a totally different kind of a situation. Totally different kind of reality confronts us the moment you step outside of Bangalore. So which is the real India then? Is it the India of the MG Road and Gandhi Bazaar and so on and so forth? Or is it the India of Kolar, of the real villages with all their infrastructure problems and very fundamental kinds of changes which have overwhelmed them in the last about 30 years? So there are these two Indias which in the past people have called it as the contradiction between Bharat and India. We need not adopt such terminology, but all that I am saying is there is this fundamental distinction between urban and rural India, where 20% of the people seem to have a relatively better shot at life, and 80% of the people don't. What are these contradictions like? Maybe by investigating through our categories and trying to avoid many of the categories through which we understand this world, we might be able to better appreciate what exactly is going on in the name of development of this country. So coming to Gram Seva Sangh very quickly, it's already been introduced by Mr. Ram Prakash, so I don't want to take much more time. What we are really looking for today is how do we create a pan-India movement for sustainable livelihood. We believe that much of what has been done in the last 70 years is to take away the livelihoods of people. What we see time and again, let me give an example. Just the day before yesterday, I was looking at in Telangana, in one of the biggest districts there, with possibly about 45,000 weavers. This is Adilabad, and when one of the very prime movers of the handloom movement in Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, by name Uzramma, she came in possibly about 30, 40 years ago. She finds about 40,000 weavers in just one district alone. And today, the number of weavers in the district is not more than 5,000 to 6,000. In Karnataka, for example, it was said that there were something like about 40 lakh weavers just about 20, 30, 40 years ago. And today, we don't seem to have anywhere near more than about 5 to 10% of them. And if you look at the Karnataka Handloom Development Corporation, it started in the name of 40,000 weavers, and today we don't even have more than 5,000 weavers. And what is really happening in such a situation, and this seems to repeat across all kinds of denominations of government structures, which are supposed to look at handloom, hand-making products of various kinds. It could be pottery, it could be other kinds of hand-making artifacts, is that in the case of KHDC, out of something like about 4 crores being spent every month, 2 crores are being spent on the bureaucracy and the infrastructure of a few hundred people. And another 2 crores is being spent on the actual labor charges being given to the weavers. This is about 6,000 weavers. This is the kind of fundamental contradictions to arrive at whenever the government actually says it is spending 500 crores, 800 crores and so on khadi development, on handloom development and so on. On the one hand, you have millions of people who create a living through hand making. It could be basket weaving, it could be various kinds of cloth making, pottery, and various other kinds of trades. And these people aren't able to fill their stomachs with 2 rotis in each meal. And then we are speaking about the development and about 10,000 crores being spent on that. And just for perspective, I would just like to add that in the last about 4 or 5 years, and this has been consistently happening all through the last 70 years, I would be the last one to take the name of any political party to say this. This has been something which all political parties in this country have actually conspired to actually create, is that the richest 0.01% of this population has had its wealth increase by 250% in the last about 5 years. And then on the other hand, when you look at the statistics across much of the world and specifically in India, you find that about 90% of the people have 1% of the wealth and 10% of the people have 99% of the wealth. This is the real fundamental kind of index of the kind of inequality that we seem to be perpetrating in the name of development, in the name of actually creating modern structures and so on and so forth. And Ram Seva Sangh actually wants to begin not by really opposing this large level inequality at the political level, but at the reconstructional level, it wants to actually say, give us the means to be able to create a livelihood for each one of these people. In fact, it is not, we don't even demand 10,000 crores like they are putting into the, there is this food park which is coming very close to Mathur. Some of you who are habituated to going there towards the Mysore and Mathur possibly might have seen this food park. And apparently the total investment there is about 10,000 crores. It will be for the plant, machinery and so on. It is said to be one of the biggest plants in biggest parks with multiple industries, of course, where food is going to be processed and used for export and various kinds of exchange across the country as well for preservation and refrigeration of food and packaging of food and making it accept processing of the food and so on and so forth. So what Ram Seva Sangh is saying is that with 500 crore rupees, we will take care of 40,000 viewers. Give it over to us. We'll use the Amul model. We'll use the model of cooperative coming together of various trades. We will ensure that it is as successful as Nandini, as successful as Amul. And we will have enough to be able to give them not 50 rupees wages for 200 days, but actually 200 rupees of wages by encouraging the development of handmade products in this country. What we find instead is that you have a very huge kind of, GST came in last year, and GST was applied very blindly on all these handmade goods. And for the first time, we find that even Khadi has been made into a brand. Raymonds and Birlas and so on and so forth, they have appropriated the Khadi mark. But today, if you want to actually make Khadi, there is a certain definition for making it as Khadi and so on. The Khadi board would expect you to pay 50,000 rupees or 10 lakh rupees and so on and so forth. So that's the level to which we have come in, where we have become so insensitive to the fact that there is such a huge inequality in this society that there are people who are simply, who have possibly 10 generations, 20 generations of experience in perhaps making parts or making steel or making cloths and so on, but they have been denied an opportunity. And when we actually look at how to rejuvenate this with very little capital, in fact, you don't require a food domain, kind of a complex like the electronic city here and so on, what they are contemplating to set up at various places. We don't require such infrastructure. Every house is the root of, into every house, many of them have these handlooms. You don't need actually, huge money to actually bootstrap these kinds of initiatives. So we could do this, we could do small things. In fact, that's one of the biggest challenges that we have taken up now after the anti-GST protests of last year. Ram Seva Sangh is opening up a huge campaign called Hey Ram, which has been on for the last about 1.5 to 2 months, where its idea is to demand restoration of livelihoods to the poor across India. And one of the things that we have been demanding is, most recent demand, has been that the KSDC be turned over to the cooperative of the artisans themselves, so they can manage it. There are so many hundreds of crores which are actually going off into the salaries of the bureaucrats. Over time, the government says, we should actually do this. Let me eliminate this, the kind of allocation for these handloom items and so on. This has been consistently happening. If you look at Khadi, if you look at handloom, handcraft, handicraft and so on. And in the last about 30 years, the budgets have actually been slashed by more than 50 to 80%. And when you look at it in real terms, this has been more than a 90% reduction, if you take into account the inflation and so on. So what Gram Seva Sangh essentially is trying to do is to sensitize not merely the rural poor, but also the urban have-nots, the educated, the elite of this country, to actually pay their attention towards something which is begging to be looked at across the country. And why, you might actually ask the question, why are you focusing so much on Bangalore when, as let's say Gram Seva Sangh, you must actually be there in the villages and so on and so forth. Bear with me for a minute. If you look at, we'll come to this at the end of this lecture. I will show you some statistics from Piketty's study, Chancellor and Piketty. If any of you have heard about the 2016 study, Piketty, by the way, is the Nobel Prize winner of the 2014 in economics. And what they do is to actually analyze the Indian income situation, and what you see was very shocking for me. I'm sure it will be fairly shocking for most of you. This is the kind of inequality that we see in this society, which he brings out in very graphic kind of detail. And this inequality has pushed our people in an independent country into such a situation that you go to Raichur, you go to Koppala, you go to various places in North Karnataka, which were essentially havens for hand production of cloth, of various kinds of items of daily use, like steel implements, like pots and pans and so on and so forth. And not, for the moment you're forgetting about agriculture. And now it looks today, if you go outside of Bangalore and look at many of these villages, they look like deserts today. There's hardly anything to eat, there is no job to be had, and the livelihoods of people have been completely eliminated. And why do we do this? We do this because we are fascinated by mechanization. We are fascinated by automation. We have lost this will to actually understand, to put our love into machines, to be able to create things with our machines. And this mechanization has actually ended up in 70 years in stealing the jobs of 90% of our people. What kind of a society are we building if we don't even understand that in the hands, in working with our hands, is the essence of all our life itself? We have a situation where we are overfed in Bangalore, and we eat too much, we consume too much, and we also poison this environment. Today, if you look at Bellandur, if you look at the mounds of trash which are actually being put into Mandur and various other places and so on, it is a very great reminder to us of how profligate we are, how we have actually messed up the Mother Earth that we are actually a part of. We think we are privileged, but our lives are possibly, fairly something to be ashamed about. Something where our overconsumption, with no care for tomorrow, is putting the entire environment in danger. And today, when we say that our forest level has gone up from 24% in 1947 to 1.5% and so on, when all that we see around us are politicians of every hue, whether it is from this party or the other, they lie to us, and there are no facilities of any kind for ordinary life, and the number of poor people in this country is increasing exponentially. We must ask ourselves, as the elite, as the people who have had a privilege of being, let us say, possibly better served by nature, better served by God, better served by our own labors and so on in terms of its returns, that we need to do something for this society. That is the essence of Ram Seva's Sangh's work. That while we work with the villagers, we also work to a large extent with the urban centers, trying to dialogue with them, trying to see if we can restore what we lost in 1947, what we had for the previous 30 to 40 years under Gandhi, the ability to understand that we can together solve a problem. We can together solve a problem which has really gotten out of hand, where 90% of our people no longer have a livelihood for leading their lives. And one of the greatest humiliations that I think we must all be affected by is the fact that there is somebody who is the grandson of a carpenter, the son of a carpenter, who has 25 to 50 tools in his home, which are unused because the carpenter says, my son, don't ever take up this profession because it's not remunerative, it doesn't even give you food. Or that of a farmer who tells his son, get out of this, go to Bangalore, get a job even in one of these little places where you get 5,000 rupees to do manual labor. but don't do agriculture. When you hear people with 10 generations, 20 generations of skills and extraordinary knowledge about wood, about, let's say, how to grow and regrow your forests and so on. These are the people who are cut out from this entire economic process. This is a very sad situation. And we ought to, as people of privilege, living in the urban centers, be able to actually think about this. And all that I'm saying in this lecture, largely, is how do we actually think about this? Is there a way by which mechanization, automation is directly related to the impoverishment of 90% of the people, and the direct increase in the wealth exponentially of the 1% of the people? If that is so, is that the kind of ideal society that we would like to build? So coming to the second part of it, that is the Lokavidya Vedika. This is essentially what we actually do. That knowledge question, we believe, is about the people's knowledge, what we call as the Lokavidya. If this is what even today constitutes 70% of our people's livelihoods, then how is it that it is not given the value that it ought to be given? That is the central question that Lokavidya movement as such tries to answer. And what we see is that for 200 years, colonialism, and I'm not just speaking about it as something which ended in 1947, it is alive, it is kicking, it is very well, and it has continued after the power transfer happened between the white man and the brown man. And we find very fundamentally that the products of all human activity are devalued. Inequalities and injustice are the norm today in the society. And our belief that we ought to actually imitate the West, the high energy, high consumption, high kind of wastage society of the West, because we believe that's the only way to our salvation, I believe our enslavement is also complete. There was a time when India was possibly the model for the world, where its people, primarily the people who work with their hands, its Kabir was a spinner, was a man who, weaver. And many of the people in Karnataka, in the Bhakti movement and various other movements, these were people who were either weavers or they were actually, ironsmiths and so on and so forth, ordinary people. And these are the ordinary people who, because of their connection of the hand and the mind, were able to create a culture where limiting one's needs and being able to share your prosperity with the rest of the society was seen as the norm for life itself. From there, we have gone to this other side where consumption and wealth seems to be the only central concern of humanity. And therein, we have lost the connection between the hand and the product of the hand with the mind. So, Lokavidya essentially tries to struggle against this at the intellectual plane. And we believe that the restoration of the centrality of Lokavidya is the most important precondition for the liberation, social equity and justice for this country. And I've already been speaking about this. To me, it appears that we may have to examine many of the assumptions that along with colonialism we seem to have learned. The very fact that we are speaking in English, in a language so foreign to us, is indicative of the problem at hand. That we are unable to actually understand our problems except through the eyes of the Westerner. This is in some sense something that needs a little bit of serious thinking on all our parts. And along with it, it appears that many of the ways in which we have reconstructed our traditions, we have made it into a history and so on, may also be very suspect. And unless we are willing to be skeptical about these two, what we have been given in the last 200 years, in terms of what the world is and how we need to live in this, what is the sense of economics, what is the sense of society and culture, unless we are willing to look at it with some skepticism, it is possible that we may not actually find a solution for these problems. And this crisis that I referred to is mainly the crisis of the existential crisis for the 70% of these people 80% of our people. And just to give an example, there is this idea of post-truth that I would like to expand upon, and that seems to capture much of the understanding of the world of ideas around us. And we see this happening every day in our lives, that the rulers of this country, again irrespective of the political rhetoric or the party actually that they come from, all truths are distorted. You look at inequality, that is distorted. And somebody would say that this is actually something that the previous regime did. We actually are doing much, much better. Day after tomorrow, if a new party comes to power, they'll say the same thing. In fact, you look at, let's say, employment statistics. Most recently, some of you may have possibly looked at a very interesting exercise where there was a claim of increased employment in the last 2 years. And because that comes in the newspapers, dies in a day, people actually tend to believe that actually there has been a tremendous generation of employment in the last 4 years. What we see instead is that the statistics, if you go to the sources of the statistics, you find them all from dubious kinds of sources. For example, in this case, they had actually looked at the PF rather than the NCAER statistics, National for the Center for Econometric Research. Instead of that, they have taken the numbers from the PF base, claiming that there has been an increase in employment. And this is the kind of power that states seem to have acquired for themselves. You see this in America, you see this in the rest of Europe, you see it in India, that the rulers of the country and the media of the country are increasingly coming together to paint a picture which is completely contrary to fact and truth. And today is a day when the capitalist actually speaks so very believably, so very painfully about hunger, about the dignity of labor, and so on and so forth. And governments speak about poverty, equality, and justice, and they are very certain that they actually stand it out. Sitting in Bangalore, sitting in Mumbai, most of us would actually believe these numbers because they come from the media, and the media actually provides graphs and various kinds of sound bites of various kinds. It could be through the TV, newspaper, and so on, and we end up actually believing this. And the essence of post-truth is that yesterday I could tell you that I will give you a certain amount of money by taking it away from bad people. I believed them yesterday. Today, you tell me that was all a joke. Actually, I can't give you that money. I believe you today. Tomorrow, you will say, what I said yesterday was a joke. In fact, I'm going to give you money. We will believe it. So, essentially, what we seem to have come to in a situation which is 70 years after independence is that any lie can actually go in, and that seems to convince a very large number of people in this society, those at least who make decisions in this society. And the dominance of media, it seems to ease the attempts to mask reality. And one of the chief transformations that we see in the world of economics, for example, I'm just taking a few examples, that the idea of value, you might possibly see it in the 1700s, 1800s, and so on. So all the important people who are today remembered for economics, right into 20th century and so on. And the process seems to be that it defines value for the market. And in the process, economics has lost the idea of income, the idea of consumption for the ordinary people. They have become very secondary. So whenever we look at the state of health of an economy in a society, we seem to only worry about interchange in the market. And that seems to be the only place where value is defined, value is actually understood. So both poverty tends to be understated and also very paradoxically overstated as a consequence of this preoccupation with the market. And the market finally defines what is right, what is wrong. And unless in India we have a we have a different view about this, then the market is what actually finally determines whether it is right for somebody to have, let's say, 10,000 crore rupees of income per year for a certain amount of capital that has put in, whereas the rest of them may not even have 2 square meals in India. So this is where what I spoke about originally, about the need for looking at categories, looking at what do you mean by this market? If this market is not able to actually sustain the lives of 80 crore people in this country, then we don't want this market. We want another market which may not actually place so much prominence on certain kinds of value which this market actually does. Maybe local markets are those where this kind of massive difference between the haves and have-nots are not preserved. Maybe exchange not through money but through goods is a better kind of a choice than exchange through money. Let me just share with you a little thought that most of the markets after 2015 in this country, 2015 November, it appears that, it is 2016 November, they had a very big shock because of the demonetization. After that, there is a huge amount of economy in Uttar Pradesh, in Madhya Pradesh and so on, which has come to a barter level. So, it appears that some of this is already happening. In the local markets at various places, we find that barter also has become something very significant. While monetary exchanges actually sustain, barter has also become a little more significant during this time. And this is what actually finally puts a death knell to the idea of value as it is practiced in today's market. If you look at, let's say, social dynamics, for example, coming to this, we seem to have sort of ossified in a certain way. I know it is very difficult for us to speak about caste and also not get passions very, very high and so on. Caste, the idea of caste seems to raise passions to a very unbelievable level in this country, irrespective of which side you are on, for it, against it, think of it as exploitative or non-exploitative, it doesn't matter. You seem to be always on the wrong side of the divide on caste and so on. But for the moment, suppose we actually look at other categories other than caste and class to actually look at this world of India. Maybe there are other truths that will be evident to us. And all the time suggesting is our obsession with caste as sometimes being reflective of social divisions, other times as reflective of economic division, yet other times as even an immoral kind of a division of society. Maybe there is a problem with that. Maybe we have actually fallen into certain explanations and understanding and representation of caste which are really not very indigenous to India. These explanations seem to have come from outside. The reconstruction of the idea of caste seems to have been in some sense captured more by 17th, 18th, 19th century ideas of the British about India than actually what they are reflective of. There are terms, they are termed in a certain sense of the 4 varnas or 4 the various jatis and so on and so forth. But the mapping between them, the relations between them, and the actual practices in various regions in this country seem to be very different from how we understand it. So this is what we call as a terminological kind of failure. There are terms, we believe the terms themselves far more than the actual phenomenon. This is like sticking in physics, sticking to the idea of wave or particle, although it is known to be neither one nor the other. So the terminology binds you to a certain understanding, while the reality or experience becomes something different. So this is one very fundamental issue that I see, which we need to actually think about as we go ahead. The third one is technology itself, and there could be nothing worse than the assumption that it is these technologies which are going to actually make lives better and so on. 70 years of technology and high science in India, what we have seen is that all the technologies can do is to destroy more effectively the society around us, the natural resources around us, the physical resources around us, and create a justification and a rationale for being able to do it far, far to a greater extent. And this is what mechanization has done really. And we'll see that hopefully in very graphically in a couple of films that we took as a part of our work in the last 1 year and so on. So there is this other thing about culture. We have become so completely ghettoized that in Karnataka, for example, it is true definitely of Andhra, Tamil Nadu, every place on this earth, including Uttar Pradesh and so on. Every 40 kilometers, what we call as Seame in Kannada, there is a framework of people of different classes, languages, variations, it may be the same, it may be Kannada, but it's a very different Kannada. The term that I have for farm implements, the term that I have for pottery, the term that I have for steel making, they change, sometimes significantly over a 40 kilometer kind of a distance. So this is the diversity, this is the kind of richness of the traditions of this place, which was partly because of geographical reasons, partly because of other kinds of social structural reasons and so on. And now we have uniformized all of that. We have one Kannada for this end of Karnataka to the other end, similarly with other places. And in the process of making it uniform for the sake of technology, for the sake of something else and so on, we seem to have lost this essential kind of diversity and richness that we have in the society. And is it because of this insensitivity, it is also a part of the other part where we don't seem to care about the environment as such. When you look at Ballari, for example, I find it heart-rending that the lives of 40, 50, 80 lakh people have been destroyed merely because there was a greed associated with possibly a coterie. In this case, a perfect representation of all the three important parties of Karnataka. All the three important parties have been a party to the devastation of Ballari. And most of you who are above 50 years, who have seen Malnad in the 1970s or 60s, possibly people who had seen it in the 1860s would have been even more sort of wonderstruck and sad. But even people who saw it in the 1950s and 60s of our Malnad and Coorg and so on, can today see the devastation that has been spread in this in the world of ours. And it is important for us to actually look at what are the reasons for this. I do not think, and I'm not even getting into thinking about what the solution could be. I do not think it is because of social media. I do not think it is because of content being available through Facebook and various other .com sites or maybe newspaper sites and so on. It is not because of speed of communication. It could be something else. What is that something? Something we need to reflect upon. Another example of what seems to be happening with big governments and big governments. In fact, one could go on and spend about maybe 2-3 hours on this. I don't want to. Just look at this. In 10 years, we are looking at $600 billion US. Now, I would like to know, in the last about 10-15 years, where the average price of oil adjusted for consumption is possibly about $30. Whereas the people have been consistently sort of charged about $80, $70 to $80. What really happens to this? And when we speak about every Lok Sabha election entailing an expenditure of 100,000 crores, would there be a dotted line which connects this with that? And this is only one part of it. This is only one part of the whole story. This is what big government is doing to us. And when we actually look at the farmers who aren't able to realize the price for their products, when 36,000 crore rupees are being sort of, loans are being sort of, put aside, we feel that's something very wrong. And in fact, only in Mangalore port, the amount of, the iron ore, which has not suffered taxes, the amount of back taxes there are about 70 to 80,000 crores. Apparently, the total amount of money which has been collected is about 5 times as much, 6 times as much. Even if one discounts it completely by 90%, the amount is staggering. So this is what big governments are doing, big centralized kinds of setups are doing. And I would just like to recall to you that out of 4 crores of wages being paid by the Handloom Development Corporation, 2 crores are for 7,000 people, 6,000 people. And another 2 crores are being spent only for a few hundred people. So this is the kind of lack of value that we have for people who 70% of our people, they live a life only by creating things with their hands, but they aren't able to realize the price for this. So therefore, to summarize, the need for a new imagination is not really about, refuting colonialism and so on. It is the fact that the instruments through which we think, the ideas, the categories that we use of various kinds, it could be about, republics, it could be about democracies, it could be about various things that we think we are enchanted by, right from understanding of Greece to understanding of possibly the Roman empires and so on of the West today. With all this, we seem to be actually looking at India only through the eyes of the outsider. This seems to be fundamentally a problem that we have carried right through the colonial era and in spite of Mahatma Gandhi. So basically, having said all this, between the Loka Vidya Vedika and the Gram Seva Sangh, I would think this addresses two very important dimensions of what perhaps may be a model for many of us. One is to resist the categories which have come with us along with colonization, to try to reimagine India. The other one is to find a practical place where we can actually put this into practice and be able to sort of, try to see how much of it can actually be integrated into our lives, lifestyles, as well as that of others and so on, which is Gram Seva Sangh. So in some sense, this duality between the mind which thinks about alternatives and the body which actually tries to adapt a lifestyle which is at once simple, dignified, and something which resonates and is in solidarity with much of the suffering people of this country would be possibly what Gram Seva Sangh could give us. So I do not want to, I think I have already spoken too much in a very large kind of a wide-ranging kind of style. I do not want to really stick to this, else I will possibly take too much more time. And what I wanted to say in a few words in this and a couple of slides is that the idea of individualism and objectivity, which have ruled the world of human imagination since 19th century, are not even things which are very familiar for the West. In fact, it's only a post-19th century kind of development. This belief in science, this belief in reasoning, this belief in rationality, and so on. And the latter part of 20th century, all of these have been shown to be not merely largely incorrect, but also false to a large extent. So, for those who are interested in this, I'd like to just point them to the work of the neurosciences in the last about 40 years to 50 years. All our notions of rationality, human autonomy, human ethics, these have been shown to be totally misplaced. And what 19th century Europe said, and which we even today seem to actually adapt in our lives, when we ask others to be logical, somebody else to be rational, somebody else to be ethical, and so on, that these are frameworks which came in largely to oppress society and not necessarily to understand society. Anyway, so basically there is a homology or a kind of a similarity in the notions of the consumer in economics and the atom in physics and so on and so forth in the humanities and the social sciences and so on. Much of this has been shown to be very iffy, very based on false premises and so on. And today, in the age of the network, some of those relationships seem to be cracking. It is not that, we are the first to point out these kinds of contradictions in our understanding of the world, but it's been happening in a very slow and sure way for the last about 20 years. So, all that we are asking is, when with the network kind of society coming into existence, is there some hope for us to be able to track these kinds of myths that have subsisted, that have existed amongst the educated intelligentsia and those who make decisions about this society? Can this change their thinking about India? So one of the thoughts that I had was to show some of these binaries. And in fact, when we speak about material, spiritual, and so on and so forth, it seems to be again based on very false kinds of presumptions. Because India, whether it was Kabir or Basavanna, whether it was Shankara or Madhvacharya, Ramanuja, or various other people who have been great preceptors in this country, I'm not sure if they spoke about materiality and spirituality in the same way which we actually see. So in India, it is not that the material and the spirit are different. It is just this, they are seen as the same, and the distinction is only in terms of the relative kind of task that you are up to, the relative frame of mind that you are up to, and the relationship between your mano, buddhi, ahankaras and so on, which are the fundamental principles which lay down the basis for humanity in terms of dharma, or in terms of their individuality, or in terms of their purva karmas and so on. But we have actually been influenced so completely by the idea of materiality and spirituality. We suddenly think Sharada Devi was about spirituality, Vivekananda was about spirituality, but all of us are about materiality. No, I don't think that's the kind of understanding that we should really have about India. So we'll leave the arguments and so on to a later date, hopefully subsequent lectures, both either here or elsewhere that we have planned for this, could be the basis for many of these kinds of ruminations and discussions on this. And what I would like to say in a word is that very few people would make these distinctions. And so here is the constitution of the world in the industrial era and in the post-industrial era. And I would like you to just focus on the fact that today's understanding of the networked world seems to represent the human being as one node in a network of nodes. And the industrial revolution, post-industrial revolution understanding of society, which got permeated into the sciences, the technologies, as well as understanding of the self and so on, seems to have fundamentally shifted. So this hopefully is an opportunity for us to be able to really make a difference in understanding India itself first, and then being able to understand what we could do in terms of the larger questions of poverty and inequality in the society. So I'll spend 1 minute on this gender question. Today's the women's movement, to a large part, is looking at things from a perspective which is significantly Western. All that I'm suggesting is, if you look at it as a knowledge problem, that the woman has significant knowledge of everything in the world that she lives in. For example, the relationship between different material. I'm talking about a typical ordinary Indian woman, not the one who goes out and works and so on. Although they are very plenty in number and so on. I don't mean they are not ordinary, but people who stay at home and look after their families and so on. Such people, the amount of knowledge they have of food, what contributes to nutrition, what contributes to growth, what contributes to good health, what contributes to medical kinds of issues, what contributes to budgeting. For example, when the man at home gives 1,500 rupees or 2,000 rupees in a month and says you manage, and she manages every kind of exigency, including guests, including a son who suddenly has to pay 50 rupees more for the trip that he has to take, or 100 rupees for this, and so on and so forth. This woman, because her knowledge is devalued, her overall kind of worth itself is devalued. And instead of looking at it from the marketplace exchange, which is what modern women's movement seems to be actually looking at, if you look at it outside of the market, but look at it in knowledge terms, it is very likely that fundamental transformations in the status of women can actually begin from there. It's not going to end there, perhaps begin there. I already referred to Dharampal's work. I would really have liked to have talked about this. 1938 is when a set of people, disgruntled, unhappy, and totally sort of pissed off, is the right word to use, about the taxes and their lifestyles and so on. They come to the Raja of Aund, which is off Pune. And long story short, this man actually makes his people cook for them, listens to them, and then asks Gandhi to put in place certain kinds of ways by which you can self-govern and so on. It's one of the greatest experiments that have been done. And for years before Aund got absorbed into the Indian Republic, it actually had a very great promise. And that story is on the internet. If any of us would want to look at that, that's one great example of what self-rule could be. So I would like to come back to the topic of this discussion, that the new village is not the village as we understand it, not the one in Chikmagalur or in Mandya or in, let us say, off Madurai and so on. The new village is really the new villagers are us, a new village. If it is a new Bangalore, then I think there will be a great deal of progress towards being able to restore the value of daily life, of a life of dignity and a life of some equity and justice for a large number of people in this country. And so I'm defining it in terms of what it is not, but perhaps we'll have a discussion where we look at what Swarajya really is in terms of the individual and the society. And I've spoken about this. What we are planning to do next is on 7th, we will start the whole process of selling in various places across Bangalore, especially where there is a huge amount of crowd. We want to sell small items of handmade fabrics to be able to draw the attention of people and hopefully make this into a larger movement where we want the viewers of this society, the potters of this society, the people who work with their hands to not only get a dignified life but to be able to determine their futures also. And that is what this whole campaign called Here On is about. Here are some vistas from the last few years, last year and a quarter, and I don't have really time to be able to sort of get through this. There were seminars, there were protests, there were all kinds of wonderful ways in which we tried to sort of influence the government to work on the GST and so on. I will not comment upon this. There are problems with the analysis, the methodology that Chancellor and Piketty have used, but yet the conclusions seem to be not merely valid but significantly truthful. So this is the 0.01%, and look at what the income share that they have. And the last one is of importance, 50% of the people. Look at what has happened in the last about 25, 30 years. Their share of the income is about 50%. I would like to stop here, but show you a couple of what I find very engaging videos. These are a part of the Padayatra that was done through last year.
After 10 kilometers of the walk, we have reached the banks of River Krishna on the morning of 31st January 2018. We are resting at a small temple called Kori Sangameshwara Temple. This temple, as many temples in this area are, is a Hindu shrine with a Muslim touch. The saint who is responsible for this shrine was deeply inspired by the Sufi tradition. Hence the green flag, hence the green fabric in a Hindu temple. On the outskirts of this temple are staying a group of handmaking people. It's a community called Bhajantris or Kauravas. You may have heard the term Bhaja Bhajantri. Yes, men in this community play on the drums. Men and women produce brooms and baskets during their free time. This, the broom and the basket, they do not sell. I mean, they do not sell it for cash. They barter it for millets. It is a cashless transaction. Hence, in our terms, useless. But the broom they make is 100% handmade, 100% biodegradable. Since this product cannot be calculated according to the tenets of the Bombay Stock Exchange and New York Stock Exchange, this product as well as this producer is languishing. They have become the wretched of the earth. And we, who are plundering and destroying this universe, are considered progressive people. Shame on us. Shame on us. Yes, let us feel ashamed. Let us get the handmade product a better price.
I have just another 3-4 minutes.
Food natural. Not anymore. Food has become not only machine made, it has become poisonous. It has become a commodity, an expensive commodity. As a result, the peasant who grows natural food, the peasant who makes food a handmade product is languishing. We, the city people, in turn, are eating very, very expensive, very, very processed, very, very poisoned food, paying through our noses at 5-star restaurant. Come, let us give a better price for natural foods and a better respect to the natural peasant. A home. It is the most cherished dream of all of us to have a home for myself and for my family. But we make our homes like this, huge, luxurious and wasteful. Our homes are often shapeless, tasteless. They can only show the ugly wealth. But there is another way homes are made. In fact, humanity has always made homes this way, using materials that are completely biodegradable, materials that are available in a radius of 2 kilometers. These homes are warm in winter and cool in summer, but these homes are not permanent. But then, we are not permanent either. We don't understand that. But the hand-making people understood this fundamental truth of the impermanence of life. They live more naturally. Come, let us make less monstrous homes and feel happier.
Just like to end here. Just one last statement from my side before I sort of end. Is that, around 16th, 15th centuries, parts very close to us, there is this very great saint who is said to come from the north. His name is Monteswami. And while the legends are many, the stories are many, in its very essence, he comes here to tell people that what you are doing is wrong. You are creating so many of these war implements because of the Vijayanagar Empire, because of the Mysore Empire, and various other feudatories down south, till Dindigal and so on. In fact, this used to be the part which used to supply a huge amount of arms and armory to many of these kingdoms in the 15th, 16th, 17th centuries. And he comes and says, what you are doing is against dharma. What you should be doing is to actually create plows and farm implements, which are actually, because of the way we are using steel, or ukku, or the carbonized steel that we had at that time, is by diverting what could be productive uses to warlike uses, which only destroys the society. And many of the stories, they are very, very imaginative, very wonderful kind of stories about him, but essentially this is what he does. And it appears that actually became a fairly big movement which led to a restoration of balance in a certain sense. This did not end up in one empire from attacking another and so on and so forth. But periodically in society, in history, we have balance being restored by a recourse to talking about dharma, about balance, about what is right, what is wrong, and so on. And it appears to me at this point in the 21st century, where we find 70% of our brethren perhaps going without food in the nights every day. Perhaps it is time for us to wake up and see if we can also help in our own little ways to restore balance to this society.